And so without further words, Dave, if you could please approach the podium.
So thank you, Dean Boulding. It's indeed an honor to be here to speak with all of you today. And congratulations to the MQM graduates and the MMS graduates. It's truly a wonderful day for all of you, and I'm sure you're excited about where you're heading. I also want to welcome and thank all the families that are here, as Dean Boulding mentioned. My wife and I, along with my daughter Lauren, were sitting right up there last year, same time, same place, watching this ceremony while our daughter Ashley graduated. So I know it's a proud moment. I know it's an important moment. And I want to tell you what I think my job is. I think my job is to tell you what I learned after I left the seats you were in exactly 40 years ago. A lot happened. And many people would wonder, okay, so where did you start? How did this happen? So I'm going to tell you that when I got out of graduate school, I thought I was going to run hospitals my entire life. That was my plan. I was passionate about it. I thought that's what I would do. So I did a residency out in Omaha, Nebraska at St. Joseph's Hospital. I thought that after that, I would come back and I'd be an administrator in a hospital, maybe run some departments. Then I thought maybe by the time I was 35 or 40, I would run a hospital. And I thought maybe by the time I got to 55, I'd run a health system with multiple hospitals. And I thought I'd retire at 65 years old with a $100,000 salary a year. It was 1978. I know you're laughing. That was a lot of money back then. So, it didn't work out like that. The only thing that I had in my mind beyond that business plan was to marry Lynette. And that part worked. But running hospitals didn't work. I ran them for 5 years. So I went and I basically was a director of clinical and ambulatory services in a hospital for my first 2 years. Then I became the administrator of a hospital by the time I was 26. And I did that for 3 years. And I didn't want to be the CEO of a health system after that because I realized that healthcare is really messed up. There are perverse incentives that drive the cost of the system through the roof without related improvements in quality, so badly that it offended me. And that's where I actually developed my real passion. And I chose to leave the hospital industry. And I went to the dark side. I have physicians in my family. And when the dark side in my world is going to HMOs, to managed care, to actually try to change healthcare at a systemic level. So I did that, and I went to a company called US Healthcare, a publicly traded company, Wall Street darling, growing through the roof, and I loved it. It was fantastic. I learned all kinds of new things that I never imagined I'd learn, and I definitely wouldn't have learned in a not-for-profit environment. How to drive earnings per share by quarter, marketing and sales, medical delivery, very complex contracting, all kinds of things that were phenomenal. But after doing that for 5 years at US Healthcare, I became president of HMO New Jersey. I then went to corporate in Blue Bell, Pennsylvania. I decided I wanted to do something else. Okay, I decided managed care really might work for a Medicaid population. Medicaid is the program in this country that serves those who are at poverty levels. They're very vulnerable. They have lack of access problems, and managed care was a great solution for them. So I left a great job with US Healthcare to create yet another company in another vertical within healthcare. I founded this company with 3 partners. We ended up winning a huge Medicaid managed care contract in Pennsylvania. Then we grew a network and built this out into New Jersey. We built it out into New York. And long story short, we ended up selling that company for $570 million to United Healthcare. After that, I ran another very large health plan that was broken. I love turnaround. So again, I took big risk to turn around Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield, which was financially underwater. I was the president and chief operating officer. We turned it around. We took it public in November of 2002. Then I went to take over another troubled company. It was Medeco Health Solutions. It was owned by Merck at the time, the big pharmaceutical manufacturer. And basically, we turned that company around, as Dean Boulding said. When I took it public in August of 2003, it was a $30 billion company. We took it public. It had a market cap of $6 billion. We turned it around. It was under Justice Department investigation when I took it over. We had some massive branding to fix. It was hard work. I had a great team of people. And in 9 years, we grew it to $72 billion in revenue, a market cap of $34 billion, and we sold it to Express Scripts. So I was 58 years old by the time that happened, and I thought I would now retire. Didn't need to work, and it was a horrible experience. I really didn't like it. I joined a lot of boards. I'm on a couple of public company boards, some private equity boards, some boards like Fuqua. But I'm an operator, and I like to be intellectually stimulated. I like to compete. I like to innovate. So, and by the way, if I didn't decide to go back to work, my wife would have made me go back to work. There wasn't room for 2 CEOs at the house. So, I then created a big data predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics company in healthcare, which is doing very well, and I'm very closely monitoring the MQM program because I'm hoping the types of graduates that come out of here will come seek jobs with me. Just make a note of that. So moving forward, I thought what I would do is just say through all of those, that is totally not, that wasn't my plan. And I'm going to tell you that I'm willing to bet 95% of you who think you kind of know what your passion is and what you're going to do for the rest of your career, don't. Look, it's 40 years later, my path was accurate for less than 5 years. And then it's completely off the charts. And the reason it's off the charts is you actually start to refine what you're really passionate about. You start to really refine what you're good at. And when you combine what you're most passionate about with what you're really good at, that's where you're going to find your greatest success, and that's where you're going to enjoy your job the most. Because if you're going to be successful, a leader of consequence, it's a lot of time and energy, and you better love it. Or else you're going to just want to go fishing. You just won't want to be doing this. And, and then you're going to miss a phenomenal opportunity with what you're armed with coming out of this program. So what did I learn? If I just summarize what I learned of those 40 years, just from what I can do, I learned I love to innovate. I'm willing to take risk and innovate and try new things. I have a passion for it. I didn't know it when I was sitting in your seats. I love to drive disruptive change. When HMOs came to the market, indemnity insurance ran healthcare in this country. We were these young, scrawny, startups, and now managed care is king of the hill. And frankly, it's never good to be king of the hill because then you get fat and lazy. And I wish someone else would come in now and start disrupting them because they're not doing the job I expect them to do. But that's another story. I love selling, and I love creating brandable differences. I didn't know as a marketer, but I love it. I love creating unique and brandable difference, and I love leading people who are incredibly competent, and I like fixing broken companies. Seeing in a platform that someone else doesn't see an opportunity to innovate and reinvent the company and make it successful like I did with Empire and Medeco. So why am I telling you all of this? It's because I want you to know I know what it feels like to be sitting in the seats you're sitting in. And I also know what I wish someone told me when I was sitting there. And so I'm going to try to give you the top 5 things that I think are really foundational at this stage you're in. And I'm assuming, as part of these comments, that ultimately you want to be leaders of consequence. Whether it's leaders of a team or CEOs of Fortune 50 companies, it doesn't matter. The same sorts of things apply. So there are 5 simple things, and some of you are going to think, boy, this is really obvious. I'm just going to tell you that when you're in the situation, it's going to ring more true to you than it will right now, even though it might sound obvious. And I'm going to start with number one. You've got to follow your passion. Every job you seek, you follow your passion. It's not about the money. If you really love what you do and you're passionate about it, I guarantee you the money always follows. I never once in my entire career left a job I was passionate about because someone else offered me more money. That's just not, at least for me, that wasn't a formula for success. You know, follow your passion, learn what you're great at, and you'll be incredibly effective. You know, your passions are going to change as you gather experience. You're going to learn things you don't know right now. You know, and as a rule, for me anyway, people are at their very best when they're doing something they care deeply about. If they don't care deeply, they just tend not to be as good. You know, and a corollary to that is I believe that typically passion is driven by a noble cause, right? Wanting to do good for society, wanting to make a difference. At least that's true for me. And I've learned in my career that the best employees that I hire are the ones who are passionate about a noble cause, especially when that noble cause and passion is about what my company does. If I interview someone who's clearly passionate and really wants to make a difference versus somebody who wants to come to me because they'll make more money than where they are, guess who I'm going to pick every time? Passionate people who care are the best employees, the ones you go to lead, and the ones who ultimately become leaders of consequence. It's how you build a world-class team, by the way, and it's how you become leaders of consequence. Number two, you need to be willing to embrace and drive change. The traditional business world is changing at an amazing pace. Brick and mortar retailers are being disrupted by internet shopping like Amazon.com. You know, Pitney Bowes, which is a postage meters company, and the US Postal Service is being disrupted by the internet, and they're actually in the middle of transformations right now. They're in some trouble. Physician office practices are being disrupted by telemedicine, the use of new technology, which changes the way doctors practice medicine in their office settings. Premise-based computing, like IBM, is being disrupted by cloud-based computing. We all know this. So you have a lot of great, iconic companies who are working very hard to remake themselves to cope with a very rapidly changing world. It's exciting, but it takes leadership to get from point A to point B. Kodak was, disrupted by digital photography. They failed to make it. I think most of you know that story. In healthcare, vertical and horizontal consolidation is dramatically changing the way healthcare is going to be delivered. CVS Caremark, which is a retail pharmacy, is in the process of buying Aetna, one of the 4 largest health plans in the country. Walmart, big box retailer, plans to buy Humana, the biggest Medicare health plan in the country. United Healthcare is buying physician practices all across the country. The list goes on and on. The world needs great leaders who can successfully manage dramatic change. The world doesn't need leaders who fear change. Leaders of consequence can't fear change. They have to embrace it and drive it. By the way, at this early stage in your careers, driving and managing change hones your leadership skills. It makes you more valuable inside the organization you participate in. It's a great way to become a more valuable employee. It's a great way to become a leader of consequence over time. It's my observation that individuals who fear change seldom become leaders of consequence. Leaders who resist disruptive change typically become custodians of the past and have short-lived careers as CEOs. The third thing is never stop learning. This is called commencement, which is kind of the beginning. Keep learning, listening, There's a lot more to learn with really practical experience. For me, when I'm not learning, I get bored. That's when I look for my next gig or invent my next idea, because I want to always be intellectually challenged, moving forward. Nothing gets stagnant. Stagnation's not a good thing. Related, don't fear failure. Fear of failure is the #1 driver of inaction. The definition of success is being right 51% of the time. Leaders of consequence are willing to try the untried. Fear of failure crushes the spirit of innovation. What you try won't always work, but you will always learn enormously in the process. I've had my own setbacks. I've had my own challenges. And by the way, I think the adversity associated with those challenges basically create an intestinal fortitude and character just like fire forges steel. I'll give you 2 examples just to put it in perspective. When I was running Oxford Health Plans, we were a Wall Street darling. We were growing like a rocket ship. We outgrew our claim system, our computer systems. They literally were exploding. So the company flash cut to a homegrown computer system they had been building for the last 5 years. They jumped over. Normally you run in parallel. They jumped over. The lights went out. We couldn't pay a claim, so we couldn't pay the doctors and hospitals who cared for all of our members in the health plan. We couldn't bill premiums to our employers, so we had no incoming revenue. We couldn't underwrite our business. It was amazingly difficult, amazingly difficult. But I'm going to tell you something when you think about Team Fuqua. I like to watch teams when you're under that kind of pressure. It's easy to be a great teammate when things are going well. You learn so much about a person when you're in a foxhole together, when you're really struggling with really difficult things. And I just think that you should be aware of that. And by the way, the people who have been in the foxholes with me for all the turnarounds I've done, all the explosive growth I've been involved with, many of them are still working for me today. They're my team. They're my Team Fuqua. And they're phenomenal. We learn together. We get better together. It's a real luxury, and it's phenomenal. The other example is Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield. So what I didn't tell you about that is it was a turnaround. We ultimately did take it public. But in the middle, half of our employees, over 3,000 employees, we were in World Trade Center. So on 9/11, we were the 4th biggest lessor in the World Trade Center. We were on 10 floors, over 3,000 people. Plane 1 hit Tower 1. That's where we were. So they didn't teach you in business school how to manage that kind of disaster. I had 3,000 people without a building to go to work to. I had server farms for all of my technology. I had call centers in that building. They were gone. I had no assets, no desks, no nothing. I lost 13 people. I went to 13 funerals. Putting the company back together, making it so that the customer never knew those buildings went down and housed half of our employees was probably one of the biggest challenges of my life. Never mind the heartache and the trauma of that entire event. But again, I think I came out of it stronger. I'm glad I'm alive to say that. And I think it's important that so long as you survive, bad things help you get better. And I think that's part of life. You shouldn't fear failure. One more thing. I think this is a really important thing. It's a more subtle thing. Organizational culture matters. What do I mean by that? You need to learn to recognize what a bad culture is. It really saddens me to watch young, talented people modify their instinctual behavior when they get inside a company that has a bad culture. They learn horrible habits, and if they stay long enough, it really hurts their career. So, what are the kinds of things I'm talking about when I talk about bad culture? Well, one, and this is Jack Welch's favorite one, the old CEO of GE. He used to say, you don't worship the org chart, because when you do, your rear ends are facing your customer. And what he's really trying to say is when you're all facing and worshiping the people above you, trying to impress them and not looking outward to your clients and satisfying their needs as a team, you're going to be mediocre at best. It's not a great culture. It's one where politics tend to grow, office politics, which are highly unproductive and quite often toxic. In fact, many of the turnarounds I've done, the first thing I had to do was fix culture. The cultures were often responsible for the biggest part of the problem in these turnarounds. Second thing I think you should think about is success breeds arrogance. And arrogance is the beginning of the downfall, always. This is true for individual people, it's true for companies, it's true for societies. When people get arrogant about their fantastic success, they tend to forget what made them great. And that is always the beginning of the end. You go from world class to mediocre, you lose your customer relationships, and only bad things happen. So you won't be able to influence necessarily the culture right out of school, but your job is to be aware of it. Don't buy into it, don't learn the habits, and do the right thing. Do the right thing for the customer. Be a leader. The only last thing I'll point out, and I think you know this, but meritocracy beats entitlement in any organization. Advancement on any criteria other than merit is a cancer in an organization leading to mediocrity at best. I've seen it many times. It is toxic, and it ruins teams when it's not about merit and what you've done. So, in closing, there's no guarantee that any of you will succeed. There was no guarantee that I would succeed when I sat in your seats. But I can tell you from 40 years of experience that understanding the concepts I just laid out would have been helpful to me 40 years ago when I was sitting where you're sitting. And where are you sitting? You're sitting on the precipice of enormous opportunity in a world that needs your skills and your leadership. So have the courage to follow your heart, do what you love, be an agent of positive change, and work hard. Ultimately, you will become leaders of consequence. I'm confident of that. And so I give you my best wishes for every success, and again, congratulations and thank you.